Good evening. Tonight is December 15th, and we do have a quorum. Due to current federal 14. And state emergency. 14, thank you. I thought as soon as I said that, I didn't think I had the right date, so I appreciate that. Due to current federal and state emergency declarations, the Minnesota directive for residents to stay at home and guidance about limiting person-to-person contact due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This board meeting of the Edina Public School District School Board is being conducted online in accordance with Minnesota Statute 13D021. People may monitor this meeting from a remote location by the district's YouTube channel. Participants are reminded to mute their microphone or phone when they are not speaking. People wishing to speak should unmute their microphone or use the raise hand feature so I can see who is waiting to speak and then wait to be recognized. I will determine the order in which participants wishing to speak will be recognized. John, will you please review tonight's agenda for us?
Yes. So after the approval of the agenda, you'll have excellence in action, where we'll be recognizing staff. After that, you will recess the meeting for 2 hearings. The first is the World's Best Workforce public hearing, and then the Truth in Taxation hearing. And then after you resume, you'll read any community input, and then the consent agenda has, of course, minutes as well as some fees approval and discussion. The board will have presentations for new course proposals, and then you have some policy reviews. And in action, we have big action items. You are going to be approving a technology levy referendum vote date, which is May 11th. You'll be approving your final tax levy. You'll be approving the guiding principles for the literacy plan, which you've had a couple of work sessions on already. You'll be approving the EAC agreement, as well as Community Ed Salaried Employees Guidebook, and the Superintendent Advisory Council's Guidebook, and additional appendices for non-affiliated employees. Nikki has been busy. And then policy review, approving 406, 423, and 424. And then information, you see the summary of the World's Best Workforce, Fine Arts Update, and the enrollment information. And then there's a report also. The board had a ad hoc committee on COVID testing update, which I believe is going to be added to discussion. Chair Allenberg. So That's it.
Great, thank you. So the first order of business tonight is to approve our agenda. We do have 2 additions to the agenda tonight, which are both part of our discussion section. They are secondary grading and an update from our COVID testing committee. Do I have a motion to approve our agenda with those 2 updates?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We will now vote by roll call to approve our agenda.
Allenberg?
Aye.
Fox? Is Matt here?
He might be late from our break.
I'll come back and ask again. Green?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Michelson?
Aye.
Shaw?
Aye.
Willen Friedman?
Aye.
Fox?
Well, we have a majority, so we will pass our agenda for the evening.
I'll try to check on Matt, Eric, to make sure he has the address.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The agenda is approved. We're now going to move on to our excellence in action portion. And first, we wanted to take a few minutes to recognize a major achievement by some of our Edina teaching staff. There were 13 educators in the state of Minnesota that received national board certification, and 8 of those happened to be from the Edina School District. This is the highest credential available to American educators and is presented through the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. The new board certified teachers are Christy Ardinger, continuous progress teacher at Countryside Elementary, Alyssa Barnes, kindergarten teacher at Countryside Elementary, Brianna Carlson, grade 4 teacher at Countryside Elementary. Erica Watson, gifted education teacher at Highlands Elementary. Dan Malik, orchestra teacher at Valley View Middle School. Brad Dolman, social studies teacher at Edina High School. Shannon Seaver, mathematics teacher at Edina High School. And Maggie Trenda, Spanish teacher at Edina High School. National board certification is achieved through a rigorous performance-based peer-reviewed assessment of a teacher's pedagogical skills and content knowledge. Teachers must submit videos of their teaching, provide samples of their students' work that demonstrate academic growth, and analyze their own teaching against student needs. On behalf of the school board and Edina families and students, thank you for your commitment to excellence in teaching, and congratulations to all of you on this major professional achievement. So yay, that's great. Congratulations. I've heard that is an arduous process, so great job. And we also have another special recognition tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Schultz, who is going to lead us through this special recognition.
Thank you. Approached by an alum of Mary Manderfeld, who nominated and recommended highly for naming a gym after Mary Manderfeld. And I'm going to turn it over to Steve Cullison, social studies teacher at the high school, who sat on the committee to discuss this, and we are bringing it for the board for their approval on the consent agenda later on. So, Steve, it's all yours.
Thank you and good evening. Members of the Edina School Board and other members of this community, thank you for allowing me this moment to make a proposal. In recognition of her 33 years of extraordinary service to our schools and community, I ask that we formally name the South Gym at Valley View Middle School the Mary Manderfeld Gym. Mary Manderfeld will retire this month as Edina's Director of Equity and Enrollment. It was for her equity work that I thought to make this nomination. It was Edina's dedication to serving all students that made me want to work in this district. She'll be the first to tell you this work is unfinished. But as someone who came up through this fine district as a student, I can testify to how far we've come over the decades. Mary hasn't done it alone, but no one has done more. Why a gym at Valley View Middle School? Because that's where she began her tenure at Edina as a physical education teacher there. Earlier in her career, she was my PE teacher. Miss Manderfeld, as I knew her then, was a great teacher, empathetic, funny, and protective. The kind of teacher that you remember years and years later fondly. In the years since, she has served as an assistant principal and as an interim principal at the high school, as a leader in Edina's unparalleled athletics program, and in so many other capacities. If you don't know Mary Manderfeld, the time I have now is going to be insufficient to cover her vital contributions to the community. If you do know her, then you're not going to need convincing. In recent months, I've spoken to many who point to her positive influence on their work, their careers, and their lives. The only person I can imagine objecting to this proposal is Mary herself, at home right now, embarrassed at all this attention. Her way has always been to shine light on others, as is often the case with the best of us. I've been a part of this community for about 40 years. I very much wish I could honor some of the other best teachers of my youth and the incredible teammates of my adulthood as an educator here in Edina. But among so many amazing educators, I can think of no others so deserving this honor. Thank you very much for everyone involved in helping me to advance this proposal, and to all of you for your time. Please take care.
So I would just like to thank you, Steve, for this honor. When I heard from both you and Dr. Schultz last Wednesday, I was speechless. I have been so blessed to live and work in a community that values education like the community of Edina does. And that really is where it all begins, a community that values its public school system. The parents in this community are incredible. They trust us with their children and support our schools and sites. I'm also grateful for the amazing staff I've had the privilege to work with at all levels and departments for the past 33 years, from transportation to food service, building and grounds, our paraprofessionals, our support staff, the district staff, and the amazing teaching staff at all 10 sites. We have incredible students, and I have been proud to have worked with so many, especially my years as a teacher and also those 15 years I was an administrator at Edina High School. I feel like I am standing on the shoulders of so many people who have and continue to serve as a mentor and role model to me. My two children, Katie and Ashley, both attended Edina Public Schools. Kindergarten through 12th grade, they received a great education. They are both successful today due to the strong academic, arts, and athletic foundation that they experienced in Edina Public Schools. Finally, I feel like it's full circle. I had Steve as a student many, many years ago at Valley View Middle School, and last year my daughter Ashley was fortunate enough to have Steve Cullison as her AP Economics teacher. I know my mom and dad are smiling down right now and are so very, very proud. I'm happy my family, my daughters, my friends could watch in this presentation, and thank you so much again for this honor.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for all your years of service, Mary. And Steve, you're actually in that gym, right? Oh, I think you're muted, Steve. Sorry.
Yes, you're correct. The gym that is behind me is the one that is to be named the Mary Manderfeld Gym. It is the South Gym at Valley View. And
on January 6th, Mary's going to be playing a faculty basketball game in that gym. You may want to come for that. Is that correct, Mary? I heard that. Did you say that this morning in lead team?
I better make sure I still have insurance health insurance before I do that.
I was kidding. She's not, but she could. All right. Congratulations, Mary.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Mary. I'm just so proud, and you made me cry, which I was not planning on tonight. So thank you for all your service, and and thank you, Steve. That was outstanding. And
thank you, Steve.
That was a wonderful tribute to Mary. So really appreciate your service. And
the only group that I should have stated that I didn't when I mentioned it is our school board. You are tireless workers on behalf of our students and unity. Not without being appreciated. It can be a very, very thankful. I doing all the best school system in the state for kids and families and staff to work at.
she blanked out, but I think she said we're the best school board she's ever worked for.
That's what she said. Yeah.
No, thank you, Mary. And I hope John gives you a little time off before you have to retire. So we really appreciate your service, and it's been a pleasure working with you and getting to know you these last few years. So, and I can't wait to see the plaque outside the gym there at Valley View. So thank you. Okay, we are going to move on. Tonight is our World's Best Workforce and Truth in Taxation hearing. So what's going to happen is we're actually going to recess our regular board meeting and move into our World's Best Workforce public hearing. Normally, this isn't as awkward as it's going to be since we are in a Google Meet. Normally, when we're in the boardroom, we have members of the public, and it's not as awkward as it's going to be right now. But these are mandatory yearly hearings for school boards to hold. So in 1 second, I'm actually going to recess our meeting, and then we're going to technically be moving into a public hearing. For board members, since this hearing is for the public, I'm going to ask that if you have a lot of questions about World's Best Workforce, I'm going to suggest that you move those questions until when we actually move back into our board meeting during the information portion of our meeting, or that we set up a follow-up work session so we're actually in session for those questions. So I'm now going to recess our meeting, and I will turn it over to Superintendent Schultz for our hearings.
Okay, so the first hearing is the World's Best Workforce, which is a legislation that looks at the goals of the district and the strategies related to that. The World's Best Workforce goals that we have been impacted, of course, by COVID, but I think Donna can give background on that. So I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Research and Evaluation, Donna Roper, to give that presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Schultz. Good evening, Chair Allenberg, Superintendent, board members, colleagues, and members of the Edina community. I would like to present my screen, I think. Is that something that'll work here so that everyone can see the presentation? So I'm going to do that quickly. And let's see. Let me know if you can see it. I just need someone to signal they can actually see it.
Yep, we see it.
Okay, I think I am going to turn off my camera just to save on bandwidth, because I've heard that that's a thing. Okay, everybody got it?
We're there.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to share a presentation to the community on this annual requirement known as the Summary Report of the World's Best Workforce and the Achievement and Integration Report. I want to first just give a special thanks to everyone who makes reporting out Edina's progress possible. Our students and families, the staff, the teachers, the principals, department leaders, all are working in concert to grow the success of all learners in Edina. And I actually get to be the lucky one to share those results. And so I just want to thank everyone for all the hard work that they're doing, especially in this really unusual pandemic year. The report tonight is on a 2020 school year, so it is a report in arrears. And the World's Best Workforce legislation comes from the state of Minnesota. It's really the way in which MDE implements the federal requirements that are known as the Every Student Succeeds Act. So in essence, the World's Best Workforce is the state's continuous improvement accountability framework, and it asks districts to set goals in 5 key areas, which you see here on this slide. In early readiness, reading by 3rd grade, closing gaps, career and college readiness, and graduation. And it also asks districts to align the work that is happening with staff development and teacher evaluation. And that's a program run by or led by, I should say, Libby Sandvik. And you hear reports on staff development and all comp throughout the year periodically. It's also asked us to align work we're doing with gifted and talented in talent development, led by Deb Richards, also who gives frequent updates on that work. And then they've added the component of making sure that we're providing low-income and minority students access to a diverse and highly qualified teacher. And we heard some amazing information tonight around the national board certifications for our teachers, and we do have amazing teachers here in Edina. Finally, in 2019, the legislation required that we add a report around achievement and integration, which is our work on closing achievement gaps. And we'll be sharing a little bit of an update on that tonight as well. Again, just for some, understanding of how we position World's Best Workforce and the A&I plan, they are components of our strategic plan. They have some overlap with the ongoing profile of a graduate, I would say, the work that we're doing to kind of shape that. And so just so people understand, our school board in the last year finished up some of the work on the strategic plan, finalized it, and we are in the first year of a new strategic plan that runs from 2020 through 2025. As far as all of the fingers who kind of can get into this legislation, you can see it's the Department of Education all the way down to our community. And our community's role is really to partner with us. The committee's role is really about giving the recommendations. And so we look forward to those strategic collaborations to support the learning and teaching going on in Edina Public Schools. The next slide is just a high-level summary. We set multiple targets in each of the goal areas every year, and you'll see that we met some of those targets and we have some unable to report and are not yet met. And we're going to talk more in detail about those as we go throughout the presentation tonight. But I just wanted to provide a quick high-level summary of what we have for all of the goal areas, so you can see that rather quickly. And then just to say, all of our goal areas obviously were impacted by COVID. With the governor's executive order to put together a safe learning plan, we had to suspend our MCAs at the end of the year. And we did complete our access tests because so many other districts didn't complete theirs. The state didn't produce growth data, which is really key to the information that we use in our goal setting process. We did have participation, what I would call participation delays for our juniors last year. And while that didn't impact our senior results negatively, we do know that if our seniors had had additional opportunities, we probably would see even better results, and they're pretty good. So we also know that many of our students took AP course exams, and the formats of those tests were very different this past year. We know that we had to take some of our days and use them for preparation and planning as we got ready to deliver learning in different models. And so there were a loss of instructional days for students. And then I did want to just recognize that our World's Best Workforce Committee meeting did get postponed while the district was prioritizing supports to other important requirements for getting us going on the new distance and hybrid learning models. But we hope to kind of get that committee back together and get going starting here in January. On that note, I'm going to just go through each of the 5 key goal areas, and I'm just going to cover the goals, the results, and we'll start with All Children Ready. You can see we did meet our goal of screening 100% of our kindergartners by the time they entered in the fall of 2019. We also had a goal of increasing the number of trained early childhood educators on the pyramid model, and we surpassed our target of 75% and reached a 95% threshold, so that was really exciting. I didn't have spring data to share around our developmental milestones, but we did want to share with you because we had committed to beginning to collect the Teaching Strategies Gold Assessment data, which are developmentally appropriate standardized milestone measures aimed at helping our teachers target improvements in their educational delivery. And you can see where our kids were at our mid-year winter check-in on those developmental milestones. And so this is just the 4-year-olds. And you can see what percent of these students are meeting the national targets in these domains. We also are tracking using FastBridge, and we've shared that data with the public and the board in the past. But again, with spring assessment cut short, we didn't really get to realize all of those great results. And then just so everybody is aware, in Edina, the kindergarten class that comes in every year, we have about 25% of those kindergarten students have been touched in some way at some point in their early learning by our Edina early childhood or early learning program. So that just means 75% of our incoming kinders actually aren't coming in through our own early learning programs. And so on that note, in talking with the early childhood team, Leah Bird and Lisa Hawthorne, some of the strategies that they will be continuing to pursue involve, making sure that the Minnesota Safe Learning Plan obviously is implemented to fidelity. They are always looking to increase their strategic partnerships with various early learning partners. They will continue supporting the professional learning of their staff. They'll work at aligning their systems and processes as it relates to data collection and just reviewing pedagogy and aligning to what's happening in the kindergarten classrooms. And then, of course, they're maximizing play-based learning to increase social emotional learning skills. And so that's kind of a high-level overview of how our early learning early readiness indicators look on this summary report for the world's best workforce. The second goal area is making sure that all third graders are reading at the third grade level. And we set a number of goals in this area. The MCA was one of our key goals that we had. And unfortunately, we're unable to report because we didn't administer that assessment, which I think we were really poised to hopefully really knock that one out of the park, but we didn't get to do it this year. So we looked to some other measures to kind of give us a sense of how we're doing. And we also set growth goals for our third graders. We look at where they are in second grade, and we want to see how they're doing and how they're growing. And we set targets for third grade growth rates to be above the 50%. In other words, 50% or more of our third graders meeting those nationally normed projected growth targets. So that chart on the left shows 56.6. That's telling you how many met the nationally normed growth targets. The chart on the right, another way that we look at MAP is to understand how kids are performing against the grade level. So this is really an appropriate way to measure how many kids are reading at a grade level. And you can see we have 76.1% of third graders measuring at or above expected third grade reading levels. And so strategies that we are honing in on going forward, obviously, you've heard about the comprehensive literacy plan we are committed to implementing. We will continue to identify and support those students who may have dyslexia or reading difficulties. We also will continue to partner with students and families. And that's one thing that we're seeing right now with this pandemic is a whole lot of partnership happening and much, much more parental involvement, which is really a positive. We also have work happening around the Tier 2 and Tier 3 evidence-based reading interventions. That's ongoing. We want to develop a support system for our multilingual English language learners because we know that those students oftentimes do need some different types of supports. And then we're also looking at ensuring the continuum of resources, including instructional materials, technology resources, interventions, and high-quality assessments are available across the continuum. So that's our third grade report. The third area, this is the probably the area we as a district have the most work to do in our racial and socioeconomic achievement gap closure work. Again, we use the MCA to measure changes in achievement gaps. Our goal was really focused on students receiving free and reduced price lunch meals versus those who were not. And obviously, we're unable to report on that. We will continue to prioritize the equity work related to closing achievement gaps. We do this through various strategies, those listed on this slide included, which involve promoting highly effective professional learning communities, making sure that we're using best evidence to understand the strengths and opportunities and do those best fit matches with our learners so that we're really moving them along. We'll continue to organize our resources to accelerate the growth and success of our students. And of course, we want to engage and develop the collective expertise of our learners by getting their voice in the room, by understanding, how it is they learn best and what they might need, along with their families and the community at large. The fourth goal area is on ensuring that our students are career and college ready. And we had set goals around our ACT benchmarks, looking to increase the percent of students that are hitting all 4 of the subject area benchmarks. And we did meet that benchmark. We also set a goal of increasing the percent of students meeting the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math benchmark, because we know that those are real important for jobs and careers and students going forward. We grew by 1 point on the STEM benchmark, not 2, so we have to have that goal is a not yet met goal. The charts that you're seeing laid out on this slide just really illuminate for you the percentage of students hitting each of the benchmarks by subject area. And what you'll notice is that, in each of the subject areas, English, math, reading, science, all 4 subjects and STEM, that our students who graduated in 2020, the senior class, just had a phenomenal year. They did really, really well. And these are indicators of how well kids will perform on a college level course. So it's indicating that they are definitely ready to do, B, 50% likelihood of B or better, 75% likelihood of C or better in these course subject areas at the college level. And then over to the right is the composite score. And while we had just a 0.2 of an increase from 2019 to 2020 in our average composite, you can see from 2016 that it's nearly 0.8, and that is a significant increase. So just so people understand, you're seeing anywhere from 8 to 10 items perhaps correct more than what they were doing previously. So our teachers are knocking it out of the park. Our kids are knocking it out of the park on these measures for career and college readiness. ACT is now also giving us a new set of data from the test. It's these certifications around job readiness. So you'll see in the lower right, there's an ACT job database that lists all the jobs that are available, and they've linked the ACT scores to job readiness. And in Edina, 609 of the 612 seniors earned one of the certificates to meet job skill requirements as determined by the ACT, which is just phenomenal. And so you can see the levels listed, 51% platinum, 30% got the gold level, and what it to the right, it tells you what that means. So if they're platinum, they could fill 99% of the jobs in the database. If they're gold, they could do 93%. And then, of course, for bronze, it's down to 17%. But we really have very, very, very few kids who are not leaving us very well prepared to be successful in a post-secondary pathway. And then the last area, goal area that we want to highlight is our graduation rates. Our graduation rate dipped just very slightly. The state of Minnesota is asking all districts to achieve a 90% or better. We're above in almost all of the categories except for in our special education student group and our English learner student group. And this year, even, our free and reduced price lunch student group managed to beat the 85% benchmark. But our goal for the 2020 year was to increase our multilingual learners' graduation rates by 3 points, and we didn't do that. We actually saw a decline. So still a little bit of work to do with our multilingual English learners. So those are the 5 key goal areas. The other part of this update includes a small update on our achievement and integration plan. And so this slide just gives you the definition of what A&I for the Minnesota program is to pursue racial and economic integration, increase student achievement, create equitable educational opportunities, and reduce academic disparities based on students' diverse racial, ethnic, and economic backgrounds in Minnesota public schools. This is the third year of a 3-year plan. And so we will be putting this plan to rest. And Mary Manderfeld and team have crafted a new plan, which we will be bringing results forward for folks next year. We'll be talking about those in our committee meetings in the next World's Best Workforce meetings. But you can see our third grade students reading at 87% in 2020 we were unable to report that. And we did not meet our ACT goal of having 70% of the students meet all 4 readiness benchmarks. Some pretty rigorous goals for the 2020 plan. And then finally, just a quick report out on our equitable access to excellent teachers. In the strategic plan, we have highlighted a goal of ensuring student diversity is reflective of our employee diversity. We do want to partner with outside folks, including the state of Minnesota, to help us work towards achieving that goal. And then just, again, kind of a little bit of a shout out to our teachers. 17, this report shows 17, but it's actually 25. We now have 25 national board certified teachers. And just to put that in perspective, so Edina has about 0.93% of all the licensed teachers in the state and 5.5% of all the national board certified teachers. So we're definitely overperforming in terms of that category. And I just wanted to give a shout out to our team for that work. So that's the World's Best Workforce Report. And now I would just take any questions, or I guess pass it back to whoever I need to pass it back to.
Chair Ellenberg, do you want to go right to the next hearing, or do you want time for questions?
Did we have any community questions or comments?
We did not receive any.
I guess then we can go to the other hearing.
Okay. All right. John, do you want to kick this off? I'll put the slide up for you.
Yep. Good evening, Chair Allenberg, Superintendent Schultz, and members of the board, the public, colleagues. Tonight is our required truth in taxation hearing for taxes payable in 2021. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that Minnesota state law requires that we conduct a public meeting between the dates listed of November 25th and December 28th after 6 p.m. Can be part of a regularly scheduled meeting. We have to allow for public comments, and then we also may adopt the final levy at that same meeting. And we also have to present our current year budget and our proposed property tax levy for 2021. So with that, the next slide, if you look in the middle section, it shows our June 30th, 2020 actual fund balances by fund. Then it shows to the right of that our 2021 budget revenues and transfers in, 2021 budget expenditures and transfers out, and our projected June 30th, 2021 fund balances. For the next slide, shows our 2021 revenue for all funds. So a revenue budget of about $158 million. The general fund comprises about 78% of that, or about $124 million. And then you can also see the various other funds: food service, community ed, building construction, and debt service that the district has. The next slide starts to look at our general fund only for revenue sources. The state, we receive 65.5% of our revenue directly from the state in the form of state aid. If you look to the right in the blue pie piece, our property taxes comprise about 30.2% of our revenue budget, and then very small amounts for federal, and the other local is activity fees, interest income, all those other various miscellaneous local revenue sources that the district has. Next slide shows our general fund on an expenditure budget at the most detailed level, at the object code level. And if you would look at the salaries at 59.6% and the benefits at 20.5%, that's 79, 80, almost 80% is spent on salaries and fringe benefits in the general fund. So again, that reflects a very human capital type of base budget, which obviously school districts are. The rest of the services categories, are purchase services at about 8.7%, supplies 3%, capital expenditures 7%, and other at 0.5%. The next slide shows our general fund expenditures by program, so the same dollars, just broken by a different methodology, by a program level based on the UFARS accounting. Just wanted to draw your attention to regular instruction, vocational instruction, special ed instruction, instructional support services, and pupil support services. If you add all those up together, so by program, we spend about 80% of our money on direct services to students. The other amount, the other 20%, is in sites and buildings, district and school administration, and district support services. So we'll next go into an overview of the proposed levy payable in 2021. This levy will increase by about 2.73%, or about $1.6 million. It does include a decrease of $169,000 approximately from refinancing our bonds, which the school board did in September. And the total finance resavings was $750,000. That's spread out over the 2021 through 2025 levy cycles. So now we'll take a look very quickly at the pluses and minuses in the levy. If you look at the next slide, this is a summary of the levy categories. So that at the top, our general fund is increasing from pay 20 to pay 21 by about 2.9%. In the middle there, community service is increasing by about 1.6%, and debt service is increasing by about 2.4%. And that gets us to our $1,617,428 of increase. Next slide starts to go over the major categories of changes in the levy. The first one is the general fund voter approved operating referendum. The change is about $394,000. The use is for general operating expenses. If the board recalls, we approved the operating referendum a few years back that increased in steps, but it also increased, it didn't increase, but it also had an inflation factor in there. So the bulk of this $394,000 is because the inflation factor increased by about 2%. That would increase our revenue by $394,000. The next category is long-term facility maintenance. That had a change of plus $978,000. That's used for facility maintenance. The Edina district is one of 25 districts that are eligible for the old way of computing long-term facilities maintenance revenue, but they're all based on state-approved projects. We use a combination in Edina of general fund levy, which this is, and we also issue bonds, which we will be doing in the spring for long-term facilities maintenance. And again, these levies are coordinated with other capital and debt levies so that we can maintain a level tax rate for all of those levies. The next one is all the prior year adjustments. There's lots of different adjustments as the state of Minnesota gets better information as we finish up our 1920 budget year and report in our expenses to the state. That's where these adjustments start to come in. And the total amount of all the adjustments is a reduction of $607,241. And you can see below the reason for the changes for these levies. Enrollment estimates change, and values and expenditures for future years change. Estimates are updated, levies then are retroactively adjusted. The next slide shows the debt service fund. And this is actually a reduction for debt excess, which means it increased our levy by $311,448. Uses of the funds is obviously for payment on the bonds. We are required to levy 105% of debt service payments to cover delinquencies if there are any in tax collections. Most of the time, that's less than 5%. So we gradually build up an excess. And we had a bigger excess last year. We have a smaller excess this year, which will increase our property tax levy by the $311,000 that you see on the screen. The next slide shows an example of taxes from 2018 to 2021. First example is on a $500,000 home. All of these examples are based on a cumulative increase of 7% from 2018 to 2021. So that's about 3 years, 18 to 19, 19 to 20, 20 to 21, that the home's market value went up about 7%. So the first example on a $500,000 home, taxes have increased from $2,481 to $2,626 for 2021. That's an estimate. That 3-year increase is $145 or 5.84%. So less than 2% a year increase for those 3 years on that $500,000 property. Next example to the right shows $1 million property. Taxes in 2018 at $5,297. 2021's estimate is $5,646 for a 3-year increase of $349 or 6.59%. So just a little over 2% for those 3 years. The next slide shows a $1.5 million property, very similar to the $1 million property, a 3-year increase of $526 and a 3-year percentage increase of 6.46%. So again, a little over 2% per year for those 3 years on average. The last example is a $2 million commercial industrial property. 3-year increase is $585, and the 3-year percentage increase is 4.95%. So a little less than the other residential examples. So that's what we're required to present to the public for our hearing. If there were any public comments, we will take them now. Did we have any public comments, Chair Allenberg?
Not that I know of. I don't know if
I did not receive any, and I know Sarah didn't either. So I don't think there are any questions or comments.
Yep, I did not receive any either. So I think based on that, this will be an action item on the board agenda later to approve the 2021 taxes payable levy. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie, you had communicated with me that a community member had a question they had asked you. You're on mute.
Yes, about the world's best workforce.
Yes. Yep.
Can I ask it now?
Yep.
Okay. So my question I received from a community member was when we were talking about the 3rd grade reading level and meeting that requirement, I noticed, or they noticed actually, and then I went and looked too, that there was no breakout from school to school reported on there, but in years past we have included that. And there was also no breakout in terms of ethnicity. And I was just curious. So the question is, why was there a change for that this year?
Thank you, Director Green. I think I can, I don't recall at the highest level when we do this summary report that we break it out by school, but the MCAs definitely are available by school on the Minnesota report card. You know, we didn't give MCAs, so it's not to say we can't break things out by school. I don't recall doing it on this report. I can go back and double check that. The other question about race, ethnicity, We do also, for our continuous improvement process, we break everything out by race, ethnicity, by all the special student groups. But for this high level report, because our goal was focused on free and reduced lunch, we did it on the special populations. So there's no magic to why we chose not to do it. It's just didn't align with the goal that we had set for the high level summary report.
Got it. Okay, but that information is available if we wanted to, if anyone wanted to look at that. Okay. Thanks.
Owen?
I think it's great that we have this report because it highlights a lot of the goals that we should seek as a district. And just quickly, it's good that we report out the third grade literacy and show it in prominence because we do have some work to do. Pretty close to a quarter of our students at the end of third grade are not reading at grade level, and half of our free and reduced lunch kids are not. So we can be happy that we have set as a strategic goal out of our strategic plan that improving our literacy scores is one of our high goals. So I think this reinforces the reason why we have that as such a high goal. So thank you for reporting to us, Donna.
Thank you. Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Donna. Unless there's anything else, I think we can finish our hearings and move back out of our recess and into our regular board meeting. So let's go back into our regular board meeting. We'll come back from recess. The next thing on our agenda is hearings from members of the public. We did not have any emails that were intended to be read at the board meeting tonight. But I just wanted to remind community members that if they do have input that they would like read at any of our monthly board meetings, to email the board and make sure you put the header board meeting comment and just do it by noon on the Monday of our board meeting. And then we can read it at our board meeting. So that was it. We're now going to move on to our consent agenda. We do have two things to pull off the consent agenda. The MSHSL fee, and then Ellen had wanted to remove the letter to Governor Walz. So is there anything else that anyone wanted removed from the consent agenda? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So motion to approve. So moved.
So
Matt and Lenny.
So it's who did the motion to approve?
So Matt did the motion, Lenny second.
Great. We will now vote by roll call to approve the consent agenda.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman,
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. Is there a motion to approve the MSHSL fee?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I wanted to pull this off the consent agenda, and the only reason I wanted to pull it off is I'm not recommending that we do not approve it. I only wanted to make the point that this is a lot of money, and we are anticipating having pretty severe budget cuts right now. And I just find it concerning spending this amount of money. And the other point that I wanted to make is over the time that I've been on the board, we've had numerous conversation and inquiries about trying to have more robust extracurricular programs at our middle schools. And usually we cannot find money to help those programs. So it's a little frustrating to me that we can find this money right now, but we can never seem to find money for more robust programs at our middle school. So I would like the district to consider at some point looking into making a similar type of investment for some more robust activities at our middle school level. And that's the only thing I wanted to say. So now we can vote on this. So we can now vote by roll call to approve the MSHSL fee.
Allenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallen Friedman.
Aye.
The MSHSL fee is approved. Is there a motion to approve the letter to Governor Walz?
So
So
moved.
moved.
We'll go Janie moved, Lenny second.
All right, thank you. Okay. So I think, Ellen, you wanted to pull this off consent?
Yeah, I want to first say what I said earlier, that I think it's a great idea that we are writing the governor as a board, and I agree with much of what is in here. But I just think that it doesn't go far enough. And I think that it focuses on requesting that some students should be allowed to return to school, but I believe that we should be striving to bring all students back to school when appropriate mitigation requirements are met. So I'm looking to change the second paragraph under revisit the safe learning plan. I'd like to change that sentence starting with, while it may be useful, number 2. I'd like to change that to read, while it may be a useful number to determine what mitigation methods are needed, it is simply too limiting. So that is one of the changes that I'd like to make, and I was wondering if I could hear from the rest of the board with respect to that.
Ellen, can you read that again?
Yeah, it is the paragraph that starts under the paragraph, revisit the safe learning plan. I'd like to change the sentence starting with, while it may be a useful number, and that we're speaking about the rate of COVID. While it may be a useful number, I'd like to read and change it to that sentence to, while it may be a useful number to determine what mitigation methods are needed, it is simply too limiting.
I think the point of that paragraph is to say that the numbers that the governor has set out have been interpreted broadly for the entire school, and that there are instances where you could bring back sections of schools when the numbers may still be high and you would still have a safe environment. And so what you're suggesting sort of changes the nature of the point that's trying to be made. So again, the governor has set these parameters. There are things for us to consider as part of the mix. And we're looking for him in these two paragraphs, to revisit them, because we'd like to see, it's not clear to us the basis for the specific numbers he's chosen. So we would like to have a reassessment based upon experience in terms of whether those numbers should be smaller. And in addition, that they may apply differently in different scenarios.
And my point is, I do want him to revisit those numbers, period.
So that's what we're saying actually in the first paragraph. The second paragraph actually is a different point we're trying to make, in that the governor's revised guidance said that districts should prioritize, even with his guidance, the district should prioritize bringing in kids that have high needs, such as special education kids, but he never gave specific guidance as to what does that mean. And so we as a district have been struggling to understand, does that mean there's a different threshold? Does that mean when it's at 75, when it's at 90, when it's at 100, we can bring in smaller populations. And so the second paragraph is specifically saying, if you as a governor are going to say, in addition to this guidance that I've given you, the 30 and 50, I'm going to then tell you districts that I want you, in addition to that, to prioritize bringing in person your special education population and your neediest learners. You need to help us refine that. Because right now it's very unclear, and every school district in the state is struggling with what to do with that lack of guidance. So those are two different asks.
And obviously we want to bring everybody back, but it isn't one of these things where we want to have no one back and then everybody, but can we gradually move and get people back?
Right, but that's not, the first part of that clause doesn't say that. It says, while it may be a useful number to determine whether schools should reopen in their entirety. So I'm saying I am wanting him to reevaluate that number and whether and not keep that clause in there. That clause is, I think, while I understand your point that this is about bringing, what do we need to, what thresholds should we be meeting to bring in our neediest students? I can appreciate that point, and I agree that we want to bring in and prioritize our neediest students. But I also want him to hear clearly from us that it is that number of cases per 10,000 that we want him to look at and revisit.
So that's why we say in the first paragraph in that section, we say we believe this is the right time to revisit and potentially revise guidance for school districts.
And I would say, and particularly the case numbers.
Okay, Janie?
Well, I just wanted to add, I'm hearing, I think, Ellen, if it sounds like your foundation and a little bit of what Owen had said goes to saying, why can't we open the school for all students? And that is what you'd be advocating in this letter. And I'd be uncomfortable making any of those changes without John and the district being on board, because really that number is a staffing issue. And so I wouldn't be interested in saying, let's push the governor to help us open our schools in entirety when the district wouldn't be comfortable saying that we could staff those models. And so I do believe the right approach right now is to work on seeing who can we get in the building versus what I think is fighting an impossible fight to say, I want to get everybody in the building. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm going to say as that respectfully, I have a different perspective. My perspective on this is I see other districts advocating strongly and succeeding in opening up their buildings to students, even when the case number per 10,000 is not met. And I want to be one of those districts that is advocating to get as many students as we can safely get into our buildings. And so I have heard that there are restrictions to this because of governor regulations, and I see other districts and boards taking a stronger stance on having the governor not just look at that 10,000 rates per 10,000, and that's my point. I think as a board member, I want to be advocating for both our administration to be pursuing this, and as a board, I'm going to be wanting to pursue this at the state level.
Matt?
I agree with everything you're saying, Ellen, but I think the letter already does it. I mean, I'm all for wordsmithing where it needs to happen, but it says in there that we want to bring back students safely. It doesn't say a few students. It says revisit the safety plan in bold. Then it says number per 10,000 cases is not the only factor, pushing on that. I mean, I don't necessarily want to make a bunch of wordsmithing changes that are going to have zero impact. He's going to read this. It's going to be in writing. It's clear we're pushing for. So So I don't really, I mean, of course, I'm open to listening to things that are different, but I don't think what you're saying is different at all whatsoever in terms of impact or the way I'm reading this letter. I think it's a choice of object versus subject being first in a sentence. It's all right there. It's clear we're not happy with the per case per 10,000. It's clear we want the kids back sooner. And it's clear we want it revisited now. I don't know what's missing.
Well, in my mind, what was missing is we are not saying this paragraph, as Erica had said when or Lenny, I'm not sure which, had said that paragraph is written in order to speak to and address some students coming back into our schools. And that was the issue with what is the triggering criteria for allowing us to bring back our neediest students. I agree we should have clearer guidance on that, but I also feel that the first sentence is not clear enough in how we expect them to be looking at the biggest hurdle that we're facing right now, which appears to be the rates per 10,000. So so if you want to keep the second paragraph because it's written and specifically for making that one point, I'm all for that. But then I would call it out more clearly in the first paragraph, and so it's a little bit stronger. So he will hear from us that is one of our hurdles, that we may not be back at school. With those numbers, we may not be back in school anytime soon.
But this is stylistic. The only thing in that entire 2 paragraphs is we're saying, please revisit this. The numbers per 10,000 should not be keeping our kids out of school. That's what it says. Could have written 2 sentences. It wouldn't have been as articulate, wouldn't have described why we have questions about CDC and how Minnesota Department of Health is translating it. I didn't write this. I think it's well written. And I think from a reading comprehension perspective in these 2 paragraphs, my takeaway would be we cannot continue to make every decision hinge off of number of cases per 10,000. Please revisit this. This is keeping our kids out of school. That's how I read it. I read it exactly how you and I both want to happen. So I'm not disagreeing with your sentiment at all whatsoever. I just don't see the value in doing a ton of wordsmithing if it's not different than what's there. I think it's right there.
Well, maybe this will be a good transition for the next paragraph. But at the last sentence in the paragraph that starts revisit the state learning plan, in the last paragraph, you could put a comma, especially the rates per 10,000 guidance, period.
Can I move us on and see how many board members want to change the wording in these 2 paragraphs?
And I'm proposing that as the wording. That would be the wording that I think would then highlight what I think is one of the barriers that we are having to opening up our schools. I would just add comma after the revised guidance for school districts, comma, especially rates per 10,000, period.
So who wants to change the wording?
Well, here are my sentiments. First off, I think it's very clearly movement in the right direction. And I'm excited that we're doing this and making a proposal like this. As I said in our earlier meeting, I would be more assertive with our language, and I could probably spend a lot of time doing that, but we have to move on. And I'm glad that this letter has been proposed. So, I agree with Ellen's proposed changes. I could make more, but in the spirit of moving things along, I do want to move things along.
So Owen likes the change. Lenny, Janie, Julie, Matt.
I just don't think it does anything. I'm with the 2 of you. We've all lined up for 4 or 6 weeks now in these long speech statements about where we all stand. All 7 of us want the kids back as soon as possible. Some of us have different barometers for what safety means. We all think that the number should be revisited. It says it clearly there. I mean, I could go through and spend 6 hours rewriting this too. I don't think that the governor's office is going to get this letter, and if we have a different sentence structure about revisiting that sentence, we're going to have a different outcome for our kids. So I'm totally focused on ends. I want to get to the discussion on the testing committee And I don't want to spend an hour wordsmithing this letter, to be completely honest. But I'm willing to listen to changes that have an impact on our kids. This doesn't.
Lenny?
I would rather keep that first paragraph broader in case there are other areas within the guidance, within the safe learning plan that revisiting would help us. In other words, I don't want them to look only at the rates per 10,000. I want the entire plan revisited. So I would not change it.
Janie? Julie?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with actually what Lenny just said. I think it would be too limiting. I think there's other things to look at with the learning plan. So I want to keep the letter as is, and I think it's a great step for advocacy for our district and public schools.
I agree. It was written with a lot of intentionality, and I'm not interested in us revisiting that right now.
Okay, so that didn't go anywhere, but I do have one more question. Could you please tell me what the attached report from the COVID-19 team is?
That's what we were supposed to talk in the work session. It's the update from Matt and Julie about their testing team. And it's just an update.
And Owen.
I'm sorry, Owen. I apologize, Owen.
So is the actual report that you're suggesting that we attach the report that was given to the board?
It's from their team. That says the status of this is what this team from our district has done, and these are next steps.
Did you read that attachment from the work session, Alan? Do you know what she's referring to?
Yeah. I just didn't understand what you would be what that does for this, how that would advocate for us. That's a rather broad report.
One of the things that did get a little twisted is that we as a process, we were going to go through the distance learning module review. Then we were going to do that review of that 2-page document. And then we're going to do the governor's letter. So we got out of sync a little bit because we haven't done the testing piece of it. But I don't want to jump to the exact takeaway. I'd rather do that over 10, 15 minutes and revisit. But maybe that's something that we could revisit at the end of the testing report update, whether there's comfort attaching that as part of to the letter or not.
Right. I would pursue it that way. I wasn't sure if that report adds anything to our letter. Speaking of what adds or doesn't add, I want money for testing, so I think that it adds a bit. But let's go through the discussion then, and then for sure, I think everybody should weigh in on whether you're right, it's additive or not.
Well, we have to vote on this right now, so we can't. The COVID testing team discussion is part of our discussion, and this letter we're voting on right now because it got pulled from consent.
Right. And I will be voting against the letter because I don't think it goes far enough. I think our board should be advocating a little bit more strongly for in-person learning.
I'm ready to vote on it. We've got a lot to do tonight.
Okay. We'll now vote by roll call to approve the letter for Governor Walz.
So before we do so, I just want to be clear that this is a positive statement by the district supporting steps that will bring more students back to school. That this is, from my perspective, a strong advocacy on behalf of bringing more students, and in fact, all students back to school, and makes particular suggestions that the governor has it within his power to adopt that would both help us financially and space-wise. It would provide for a safe environment or allow us to continue to provide a safe environment for our students and for our teachers. And it pushes the envelope. And so I'm glad that this letter is before the board. I think it's important that we support it. And I think that it does make a statement on behalf of the district. And the other thing that I would request is that if the board approves this, that the superintendent circulate this letter among the AMSD schools to see if they would join the letter so that we can get a stronger force.
I can make that happen.
Please say that I'm proud of both myself, Director Schultz and my governance team for showing leadership in doing this. No other school district has actually written to Governor Walz. And so I guess I'm a little disheartened that you would vote no just because it doesn't go as far as you would like, because quite frankly, I didn't have to write it and John didn't have to write it. We could have nothing that we're advocating for. So it is a positive step, and we are trying and we are advocating, and we've laid out many steps to take that we think are really important that the governor look at to move our district in the right direction. Owen?
I'm going to compromise here because while I would like to have Ellen's language in there, and I'd like to have some of my own language in there, we're under a timeline, and I think it really expresses many things that I think all of us do want, and I would like that made prominent in front of the governor's eyes. So I will support the letter.
Thanks. All right, let's do our roll call vote.
Ellenberg?
Aye.
Fox?
Aye.
Green?
Aye.
Jones?
Nay.
Michelson?
Aye.
Shaw?
Aye.
Wallen Friedman?
Aye.
The letter to Governor Walz is approved. And now we're going to move on to our discussion items. We now have 4 items up for discussion. The first, we will have Teaching and Learning Director Jody D. St. Hubert here to talk about new courses.
Real quick, yeah, Erica, sorry, Jody, to interrupt. I would suggest that I go last and we can get administration home that could get home. But
I already had that.
So. Very good. I rescind my request. Please go ahead, Jody.
You just delayed them by 30 seconds, Matt.
I failed, Jody. Please continue.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Ellenberg, Superintendent Schultz, members of the board, community members, and colleagues. We have new course proposals up for discussion. I want to definitely take a moment to introduce Gavin McLean, who is here with me tonight as our secondary science lead, to listen in to any feedback that you have. Welcome, Gavin. We're glad you're here. I also want to make sure I introduce Katrina Stern, who I don't think is here with us yet tonight, and it will be trying to join if she can. But she's also taken a leadership role and is focusing on secondary professional development and support with course design. So as you saw in the report, it highlights only a couple of new courses, a couple of dropped one actually dropped course, and a couple of course name changes. The only thing I want to highlight before turning it over for feedback and discussion is that you most likely noted that in the budget column for the 9th grade / 8th grade physical earth science class, we have the budget to be determined. We are in the process of evaluating where we are at with that and the resources that will be needed. And so, of course, we commit to all of you to bring those budget updates to you when we do have them. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions for questions or feedback.
Sorry, I misplaced my mute button. Yeah,
yes. I've got a question for Gavin and Jody on the science. One thing that I was trying to figure out, and maybe you can help me, is with the new 9th grade science coming in and knowing that our students have only a graduation requirement of 3 sciences, what does that do to how you would then be looking at 10th, 11th, and 12th? What would that sequence look like? And I know that's not necessarily as critical to passing of anything, but that was one question I had. I was trying to figure out.
No, good question. And so good evening, Chair Ellenberg, Superintendent Schultz, members of the board. Thank you. Mr. Fox, I'll try and keep it brief so at least you get to your point. Yes, we have had a lot of discussion about the sequence. We got stakeholder feedback as some of you were naturally involved in some of those groups actually just under a year ago. And we did have the discussion about our current sequence and where it would be. Where did we actually land? There would be a 9th grade course, which would be our earth science science, which was part of that. From the stakeholder feedback, we kind of got two very contrasting stories, that we have a population of students that want to access the AP chemistry, the AP biology. They want to be able to pack it into a schedule to be able to make sure they can do all the sciences they want before they need to graduate. So with that, it was very strongly recommended that chemistry should become first, and that was a natural building block into biology, which is what it currently is. But we do have some students that's just not appropriate for. They don't want to track into the AP sciences, even if they are capable across the board. It's maybe science is not for them. So we're not going to have a prerequisite so it doesn't force students that they have to kind of do chemistry. So what we'll end up doing is strongly recommending chemistry, because it is the gatekeeper to those courses and naturally a good building block for biology. But there will be students, for whatever reason, that it's not a pathway that's for them. So they will have the opportunity, and they can take biology as a 10th grader, and so therefore slightly out of sequence. And that way it should give us those pathways and those flexibility, which came from the people that reported back to us.
That's great. And I'm just going to say that I got really sad when you just reminded me that like a year ago, we were all in a room talking about this, like at the high school. All of a sudden I was like, oh my God, we were together. So that just made me really sad, Gavin. Sorry.
Yeah, it seems a lifetime ago.
Any other questions or comments? Ellen?
Yeah, and I was wondering where the state standards fits into when we were talking about whether or not you have physics in 9th grade or physics in 12th grade or not have physics at all. If you could speak to that a little bit. I'm trying to wrap my mind around what science standards are for high school.
Yeah. And so there's sort of two expectations, or two groups of train of thought here. There's the state expectations, and then the expectations of what people think that they need to go to college or to be successful in science. And they don't necessarily are the same thing. So the state are going to be requiring all students and all schools to kind of implement this by the 23-24 school year, to do a full year of earth science at the high school level, a full year of life science or biology, and then a full year of chemistry or physics. So you don't actually need to do both to graduate. But many of us see that we still need chemistry and physics because they see that as an opportunity for a gatekeeper for college courses, or they see that as the building blocks or an expectation that what many students may have. So the actual graduation requirements for the state is biology, earth science, and it's chemistry or physics. But for a majority of our students, we believe that they're going to be doing both of them, just as they currently do. So for a large, probably a population of our students, they may still choose to do physics. And we're going to make that physics course as a senior course. So it's more in a traditional place of where you would expect a physics course to be.
And does that fit in with a Project Lead the Way sequence?
Yeah, so our next sort of phase now we've done the sequence is to look at those levels. So we'll be looking at that talent design framework. That's to be coming just in early part of the new year. So we'll come back to you on that one. So we'll be looking at levels. We'll also be looking at the electives and the STEM framework. So that is, how do our current electives fit into that model? And how do they build off those things, and what prerequisites do they need in that sequence, as well as the Project Lead the Way? Could they be tied and could be toggled to some of those courses, and could they be the alternatives? If a student doesn't choose to do chemistry as a 10th grader, what are those alternative pathways and what are those other choices? And in that list would be Project Lead the Way.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate hearing that you're coming back with us to describe the levels, because I would be looking for opportunities for all level students, such as the enriched courses that we're currently offering in 8th grade and in 9th grade. But also, I'd like to just, when you come back, I'm really keen to hear how the district is also going to blend in computer science with the science curriculum. And that's something that we've talked about for future job readiness. And so I don't know, are you prepared to do that in early next year, or when might the board hear some plans?
That'll be probably most likely in the spring. Yes, it's on the kind of docket. It is on the list. We've been reaching out to other departments for their alignment and their overlap. So that one traditionally comes into a math sequence and usually a math kind of prerequisite course. But obviously there's natural overlap into science with some of those. So yes, that'll be a conversation. It'll probably take place in early part of spring.
Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome.
Gavin, this is Owen. I can tag in on that. As a developer, I would very strongly advocate that we place high prominence on computer science and really highlight the possibility of students being able to take it and maybe even raise its prominence within our offerings, because so many jobs are going in that direction. And the other plug I'd like to make is that we continue to have our separate enriched courses for these science classes, and to keep that distinction going. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to give a shout out. We have amazing computer science classes at our high school right now. I just want to make sure people know that. And we've got amazing teachers teaching those classes. So I just wanted to make sure people knew that we do offer computer science. It's a great class. I have a student in it right now. It's very challenging. So, and there are multiple levels. So.
And I've got two sons who've gone through those AP computer science classes, and they've learned a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions?
And I agree that we do have those classes, but I want to make sure that as a district, we're looking at from K through 12 a coherent program for computer science, and so as we're talking about changing middle school science programming and potentially merging classes with STEM and with potentially math or other science, I just want to say that I do think that would be, this is the time to be looking at how to do that, and not just be having it be, I know that we have maybe one class in the middle school, but I'd like to see it more of a coherent plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie?
I don't have any feedback other than I thought the presentation and the work is excellent. I'm really excited for where science is going. And I think that the tying with the talent development framework, you can really see it laying out and more opportunities for students to advance. And so I just wanted to say kudos and great work.
Thank you. Anything else? No? Oh, great. Thank you. I think that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you both for coming. I appreciate it. Oh, and Andy also, sorry. There you. I see you there in the far corner. Thank you, Andy. Okay. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Board Member Owen Michelson to talk us through the policies up for discussion.
Thank you, Chair Allenberg. We have a number of policies here to discuss. Much of it is in the spirit of consolidation and cleaning up of language. The first one I'll lead with is our policy 410. Again, this being part of the 400 series that we are visiting intensely this year to go through. The policy 410 is our Family Leave and Medical Act. And we are proposing that we consolidate the language. You can see that we have struck a great deal here. The idea being that much of it's covered by state statute and that it has multiple jurisdictions, that it is satisfying federal, state, and local. And we want this to be an instrument of clear communication, and lest the statute change, we would not have to always adapt to it. So that is policy 410, and I invite any questions or conversations about it. And Nikki is here, and she's our thought leader on much of this. No questions? Okay, we can move on. Then we move to policy 414 and policy 415. We are encouraging the consolidation of both policies. These are the maltreatment of minors and of adults, and we are proposing the simplification of the language. Again, we have a similar situation that much of this is covered by state statute, and as an instrument of communication, we want it to be concise and clear, and not having to always constantly keep up with the statute, but it says what it needs to say. And we really have no substantive changes with this. So I invite any questions or comments. None. Okay, we're moving right along here. Then we have policy 430, which we are suggesting that we rescind. This is student teachers and the teacher intern supervision. And again, this is covered by state statute. And this is redundant of basic practices we have in the district already. So in the interest of simplification, we would then encourage its rescission. Any comments? None. Wow, this is going to be fast. The next is policy 434, where again...
You guys are doing good work.
Wow, good. My goodness, we are on a roll. Nikki, you can take a lot of credit for this. Policy 430, we are also recommending that we rescind this. This, as a communication device, is redundant because the employee guidebook covers much of this, and we don't want to have the policy have to keep up with any changes in the guidebook. So, any comments? Wow. Okay.
Nice job.
I'm impressed. Okay, 435, employee evaluation and improvement. This is, we're encouraging some modifications on it and some clarification. And we are not encouraging the rescinding of this because it serves as a prominent vehicle of communication to the community that we do indeed have employee evaluation and a plan of improvement for our employees. So a little language cleanup, but encouraging that we keep it. Thoughts, comments? Wow. Talk about a mute bunch today.
Home run, Owen. Home run.
Okay. So with that, then Chair Allenberg, I turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you. Now we can talk 30 minutes more on some other topic. So we're going to move on to secondary grading. And is this Andy? And
so I think I'll have Randy kick us off.
Okay.
So just to remind the board, last spring, you acted on a similar resolution when we were in COVID, and the leadership at the high school as well as the middle school are preparing for, of course, the end of semester grades come January. Mm-hmm. So Eric and I thought we should have these resolutions in place for the board to discuss and then approve. So you'll hear the secondary tonight. January 4th, we will have elementary in a discussion during the org meeting, and then January 11th, you'll approve the grading for both the elementary and the second. So Randy, can I hand it over to you?
Sure. Thanks, John. Good evening, Superintendent Schultz and Chair Allenberg and board members and community members again. This is fairly straightforward. We believe this is a win-win situation for students and for families. And we believe it's very important that we want to continue to keep motivation maximized and encourage kids to continue to work hard all the way through the end of the semester, all the way through the end of the year. So the proposal is to adjust the grading scale a little bit, or the grading letters, I guess, with middle school, and really pulling D's and F's as an indicator progress out and moving to a score that says not yet, or NY. What not yet means is that you haven't yet met the competency, but we want to continue to encourage you to do so. So at the middle school, the grade scale would be A, B, C, and then NY. If the student never completes that not yet, then that would simply move to an incomplete, just indicating that they never completed the requirement in middle school. Middle school is different than high school in a number of ways, but one important way is that students don't earn credits in middle school. So to some degree, they are practicing a secondary grading system and scale, but it's not recorded on a permanent transcript. It is definitely very important as they practice skills and concepts and they build prerequisite knowledge that helps them for high school. But this is really about trying to keep the motivation window open. We know from the literature what an F does to a student, and when they get Fs and they see Fs, they tend to shut down. And so we're trying to think about other ways of continuing to encourage kids. And then similarly at the high school, but yet a little bit different, keeping the scale of A, B, C, D, I, and then NG. So I represents work that, again, students haven't completed. It's not complete. It's incomplete, and then that would change to a no grade. Now, this is a little bit different because this goes on a permanent transcript. And then at the end of the semester, students would also have the option to take one or more of those passing letter grades and apply a P, which would be pass. A P would not count as part of the GPA. But it does also provide some room or space to accommodate those students and families who may have unusual circumstances at home, especially during this pandemic, into a form that families could use to propose that grade change. Now, that grade change would only occur after grades have already been turned in and completed, and then families could make that request to make that change. We want to keep kids motivated and working hard as possible all the way up to the end of the semester, see where they end up, and then if they are not satisfied with what that looks like on the transcript, they would have the option to look at one or more of those grades and convert that to a P. I'm going to pause there and see if Andy wants to add a few other comments here.
Just to clarify, the piece of the difference at the high school between an I, an incomplete, and an NG. An incomplete has been happening in Edina systems and high schools around the country when a student, for one particular reason, needs an extension on the end of their term. So they get incomplete and they finish that work, and their letter grade would be recorded as an A, B, C, whatever they might have earned when they completed that work. So there's could be different extenuating circumstances that a teacher would grant an incomplete. What we're proposing here, because of trying to hold students harmless with distance learning, is we are removing the letter grade of F. When a student receives an NG, they're essentially not getting credit for the course. They would have not met minimum expectations, but we are just not damaging their GPA by giving that letter grade of F. And we're also giving some options to students, because if they were negatively impacted by distance learning, that they could replace a passing letter grade to a P. And that would be their choice. But we're also giving kids that are really doing very well and getting A's and B's and doing very well, that they would maintain those same letter grades and keep them as they earned them. So it's really the same model that we did last spring to hold our kids harmless related to distance learning.
So with that, we'll turn it back to our chair to see if we have any questions from the board.
Questions from the board? Julie.
Yeah, I just have a quick one. When we implemented this last year, I know it was under a little bit different circumstances with kind of the sudden changes of things, but did you get any feedback from teachers on that they got feedback from students about this? Like, was it mostly positive? Do you see any negatives to this, I guess, is my question? Because I mean, I think last year when it was presented, it felt like such a win-win. I just thought I'd give you a minute to share your perspective on that.
You know, I don't think there's any negative with this. The one piece that we put in the form that's different this year is that we don't have universities around the country being more as outspoken as they were about how we're holding kids harmless for multiple P letter grades and things like that. So we did include in our information that students should have a conversation with their counselor before, they consider choosing multiple P grades instead of their letter grades. So if they're choosing, they don't want to have a C on their transcript and they're choosing a P, they want to have a conversation with their counselor where they're applying to college and so on. But in general, there's a win-win to support some students that may have been impacted, and we're still allowing students that have earned those top grades to maintain those top grades.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Ellen?
Yes, so as far as satisfying graduation requirements, could you tell me how that works with this grading model?
What does the graduation requirements have to do with this particular change? It has no impact whatsoever. So students that received a P for a grade would still receive credit for that particular course. Whether it was an English class or a Project Lead the Way class, they would receive credit, and it would apply towards their graduation requirements by subject area or just by elective credit.
But the I and the NG, would that be counted as well, or how does that work?
Yes, if a student receives an NG, they do not receive credit for the course. So let's say a student received an NG in a required English class. They would need to either repeat that class in a future semester or take that in summer school to recover that credit in a required area. Or if it was a credit that was towards their total number of credits they needed to graduate, if they were a senior and had that class, then yes, they would need to go to summer school to be able to complete that course. So we're not talking about passing students that have not met minimum expectations. We're changing that letter grade from F to NG to not impact the GPA so negatively. But students still have to meet minimum standards in order to pass their classes and meet graduation requirements.
Thanks, Andy.
I have a quick question. The proposal specifies that this is for this semester. So do both Andy, do you anticipate, do you only want this for this semester or do you want this for the entire year? I don't anticipate us not having disruptions to the school learning models next semester. So I guess I'm wondering why we're not proposing this for both semesters at this point.
I think it's just because I want to reevaluate where we are second semester. I think that our counselors in our school would say that we typically allow students to maybe take a single class for a pass in a semester. That's how our practice has been. These are unusual circumstances to allow more. We'd have to have a broader conversation if that became something that we did on a more permanent basis. So I think right now I'm comfortable with us making a decision for this semester.
Okay. And then my second question, do you anticipate changing the weighting of testing? Because I know that's also actually in our policy. Like or we say up front. So I know there was some kerfluffle about taking out exams and things like that. So I just wanted to see if that was being talked about.
We have floors and ceilings in terms of summative and formative assessments, and typically finals or final exams have been built into that summative category. And so that will be the same. We did adjust because of distance learning. Our final exams are going to be a shorter duration of time, just because we think it's inappropriate for students to be spending, an hour and a half, 2 hours on an exam in a distance learning format. So we have shortened those. I think all of our teachers will give end of course exams or activities of some kind. So that could be a discussion. It could be a traditional exam that would fit into that summative category.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? So this will come up for action January 11th. We'll see proposal from elementary school on January 4th, and then that will also come up for action on the 11th. So,
correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Okay. Next, finally, Matt, Julie, and Owen, an update from the COVID testing team.
All right. This is Matt to kick off. That was testing during COVID. This is testing for COVID. So just smooth transition here. What we're trying to do is make sure, I'll try to keep everybody's attention here after 4 hours of meetings. It's obviously a difficult time. Really appreciate everybody's efforts. I know that while we're trying to keep the plane in the sky, we're also trying to rebuild it and make it stronger. So it's a lot of work on everyone's part. Really want to thank the 11 people on the testing committee, along with I'm serving as co-chair on the board. Also, Julie and Owen have been putting in significant time, which I really appreciate. From the administration, Nikki Tusher is here with us for a 6th call of the day with me at least. And Mary Hyman's been putting in a ton of time. Trevor Helmers from the legal side, Nick Kelly and Kelly DeWeese from Bloomington Public Health, and then from parent representation and also the medical field professionals of Dr. Sarah Prebel and Albert Zai. So thanks to everybody for all the work. It's been about 6 weeks, give or take Thanksgiving, that everybody's been at it. So I'm not going to read you a document that's readable, but for those that may be following at home or looking at this later, this was a work session topic. So there is a document in the agenda under the work session packet. We rolled this conversation based on time requirements into the main meeting. So again, on today's date of December 14th, if you go to the work session, you can see the update from the committee. Nikki and Julie did a lot of crafting of this 2-pager to make it very succinct. I wouldn't have been nearly as succinct. So again, thank you both. On this first page, the main idea is just to really say, where do we start and where are we now? Obviously, when we started the committee, some of the things that were happening where kids were in school, we were trying to increase the amount of time in school across all grade levels, hopefully with an opportunistic view that maybe numbers will start to decline a bit, realizing that the winter and colder weather is actually spike viruses. So at that point in time, that's what we were trying to focus on, getting more kids in school and the kids that were in school, keeping them there. That goal remains the same, but the working dynamics have shifted dramatically. We listed out 6 major changes. Obviously, kids not being in school right now being the most pronounced. In terms of the committee, really what we were looking for was perhaps a silver bullet in one of 3 categories. What I mean by that is in the categories of funding, logistics and operations, or the testing procedures, or companies that could basically provide testing in a kind of a full-on packaged way. Funding, obviously, we reviewed this as a committee. In terms of board discussions, both at the finance committee and at one of the last work sessions, we've announced that we do have to deal with some important budget considerations going into next year. So that's not a luxury at this point in time in general. Logistics and operations, we have 10 different sites. There isn't a centralized location that works ideally for everyone, and each location has its different in-out parameters for how to move somebody who may or may not have contracted COVID. And then also from a testing position, we've spoken to 4 different outfits, and there's no, here we've got this free test for you that's rapid in 20 minutes that we can give you as easy as a lunch tray in the cafeteria. So there was no silver bullet, not super unexpected, but in that diligence process, what we did was try to figure out what the best options are in each area. And we are optimistic that there's serious opportunity here to be able to bring students back more quickly if we're able to implement meaningful testing procedures across the Edina school system. So just to let you know, that's what we spent a lot of our time doing, is having conversations internally about going through legal, insurances, allowances, and then speaking outwardly. We spoke with 4 different outfits that are providing testing in some capacity, and I think there may be a path here. So as a committee, one thing we realized as well is in trying to find big, broad solutions right away, we realized that we need to really start narrowly, of course, and have a pilot in 1 or 2 settings and grow from there. One other major dynamic that everybody should be aware of, if you're not aware, Pfizer's drug was approved over the weekend. And then additionally, Moderna is probably not far behind. So vaccines are on the horizon. Some 40,000 vials have already been shipped to the state of Minnesota. So a lot of resources are being tilted toward the vaccine path. It's our firm belief that even the discussion earlier tonight about who's considered a first responder and when do people get vaccines, still allows to have testing make a really meaningful impact in 2021. So what I'm saying to this board is that the committee still strongly feels that there is an avenue for testing to make staff safer, to make students safer, to bring students back sooner, and to be able to maintain students in classrooms by doing testing. So that is how the committee feels. And what we want to do is narrow the scope in some ways and broaden it in others. So we're not proposing an all-out cross-district 8,400 student testing process to roll out in the first quarter of next year, or especially in January or February. What we are proposing is to choose one provider, do a specific pilot process in one or two sites where we're able to come in and do methodical approaches to testing and have that be something that, yes, the district may absorb those initial steps of, but we have thoughts around fundraising for this as well. Earlier tonight, we discussed the governor's letter. This was kind of a little out of sync of original plans, but we're acting as leaders, I think, here in Edina by writing that note and sending it and pushing that. We'd really like reconsideration of some of the terms upon which you can bring students back. I think this is another good leadership avenue for this board, this district, and this administration, and frankly, community. The community pushed for this really hard, and that helped us all get focused around this initiative. So in terms of narrowing the scope, what we want to do, again, is work with one group to do testing as rapid as possible in one or two settings. And then secondly, this group was initially tasked with looking into testing parameters kind of period. We want to broaden that slightly to be able to ask you to say, can we also work on some fundraising efforts, make some outreach to state and local governments, and see where else we can find resources to help support these testing environments. So I'd like to pause there and ask Julie and then Owen, or either direction, to both give some thoughts, having also served on the committee, about our next steps, and then open it for questions.
You want to go, Owen? Okay. Yeah, I mean, Matt set it up. Am I on mute? No. Matt, thank you. I think you set that up great with where our committee started and where we are now. I think that the one thing that's really important, I think, is, and we've talked a lot about this, is rapid testing is one of the elements that could be in our toolbox to then get kids back in school. And I think there's no magical path forward with COVID. And so that's why our committee has come to the conclusion, like, this is a really important piece of the puzzle that we could offer. The other thing is, I think the goal is, and on top of keeping our schools safe, I do think, some of the feedback that we were getting with the different people that we've talked to who have done this in different settings with schools is, behavior around the virus is as important as anything else. And I think that an approach like this for our district, it's a win-win. Like, if we can pull some positive cases out of our school community and start to change some behavior and attitudes towards COVID and that accountability, I think it's at least it's pushing us in the right direction and trying to move us forward, which I think is, to me, the vision here on what the purpose of this committee is. So.
Well, to me, what was very exciting about this right from the get-go, it was a real example of community support. It's kind of like the old barn raisings of the past. We had 10 physicians who put their hands up and said, we want to help. And a couple of them became prominent with this. And without them, we really could not have done this. And so we really relied on community participation here. And the whole focus was on getting the big rocks in. We spent a lot of time talking about operations and funding, and there's a lot of complexity behind that. And so we've been willowing it down, as Matt has been talking about. And so I think we've got the project on the rails and we're moving ahead. I did hear from some community members that they wish that we were moving faster. I heard some people say you're talking about silent transmission, and yes, that is not exactly settled. Things like cycle thresholds, yes, we'll work those details out as we get closer and closer, but the big thing is we're moving in the right direction, and we've got a big locomotive here. And so, as Matt talked about, we're trying to take it down into bite-sized hunks. So we've got a pilot that we're proposing. So it's all to the end of raising community confidence so that we can get the kids back to school face to face as soon as we possibly can, that all of us are in support of.
Thanks, Ellen. And before I open it to questions to that end, in terms of speed, I think that, to what Owen said, it is critical. The community input and impact and support and volunteerism we've gotten has been great and absolutely pivotal to get this done or to get to the next step of evaluation. The logistics around HIPAA compliance, testing, integration into schools while we're going into distance learning and a holiday, we're trying to be measured so we don't mess this up and then no one can do it. No one has really done this effectively. No one has done this on a broad scale. And while departments of health and others have an idea toward helping, there's a lot of distractions. And now, again, with the vaccines coming, it continues to be something that isn't receiving, I would say, the front page of a real way to get kids back in school. So we're going to keep pushing it. Community opportunities are opening. There are more centers around us. We've even looked into logistics about doing transportation, which becomes more challenging itself than it seems than just treating kids or testing kids and staff in our own setting. So we've looked into a lot of avenues, talked to, like I said, 4 different groups that provide this, done cost analyses. And so I think what we'd like to do as a group is come back to you in the January timeframe with a firm pilot plan in hand to say, this is what we want to do, this is what it costs, and this is what it looks like. Because again, it's been 6 weeks over a holiday while going to distance learning, and everyone's running at 100 miles an hour. So I'm grateful to those that are working on it. We're all impatient. I'm impatient. So I'm in a place of, I've been asked by people recently, it seems like you board members have 60 hours in meetings a week. Like, how do you feel about it, right? I mean, right now, what I would say is administration has the same, and it feels better to be somebody working on something than not having that ability. So I'm grateful that the work's going on. And what I'm asking the rest of the board to say is that they understand where we're going with this. We'll come back in January with a firm pilot plan. We believe this can make a change in terms of implementation around getting kids and teachers and everyone back in school safely. And we'll also have somewhat of a short white paper in January that also gives color and context as to what frequency matters, why. Owen did ask me today if I could please comment on costing a little bit. So we had first talked about a broad scale process or program being unattainable. However, we think those first bite-sized chunks could be in the $10,000, $20,000 range to be able to get a pilot going over 3-4 weeks, get momentum, and do outside fundraising. So we're taking this as seriously as we can, and that's where I'll pause for the second time, maybe. So any board feedback about that, what we're looking for in this discussion is any questions about how we're doing things, any suggestions of other resources, and then, you all know how to reach me as well. But again, with open meeting law, we have these limited time that we can all engage around something even as important and benign as trying to get kids back in school. So thank you.
Thank you. Questions from board members? Jeannie?
Yeah, I'm just going to put a plug in to say thank you guys for doing this. I know you've put a lot of time into this, and I know it's not an easy task. And I just want to say thank you for pushing this forward and helping us to be a leader in this. So thank you, Matt and Julie and Owen.
Thanks, Jenny.
I have a question. And it's more for John or Nikki. I want to make sure that we're not planning something that can't be operationalized. And so from your perspective, do you have any red flags, or are you, do you think that this is something that we can actually operationalize, even if it's a pilot on a small scale?
Well, I think it depends on how it would be for the testing and how we would get students and staff to the test. I guess it really depends. Couldn't comment until you have the plan in place. But yeah, go ahead, Nikki.
And that is part of our analysis that the committee is doing, is looking at all those operational challenges and the costs associated with them. So that will be part of any type of a pilot that we propose.
Okay.
So to that end, it's a good question, Erica. And that was the question was, is there a there? And so having Trevor and having Nikki on the committee, Mary is running triple duty in terms of her day job, plus helping out with all the different sites with the first responders, plus now being on our committee as well. We're being sensitive to not trying to overburden the administration beyond capacity, which is why, again, a pilot makes sense. And again, we are we're in conversations now with some of the best in the state, if not nationally, that are working on this as rollout pilots in other areas. So we've worked through a few different groups. For instance, one has probably the best rapid test, but it's not attainable from a cost implementation perspective. One has the best kind of logistics plan behind it and is more rapid, but doesn't do daily. So we'll have that all kind of profiled. I mean, what we really wanted to do was get this in front of the board in a work session, say we're working on it, narrow pilot, broader scope for fundraising, other initiative to support it, and ask for your support for us to keep working at no cost over the next month.
So I'm fully supportive of all of that. And thank you guys for your work. I think it's exciting. I think, like you probably said, Matt or Julie said, I think it's one tool in a toolkit that will get us back to school, as opposed to any one of these things being like a silver bullet. But I really appreciate the work you guys have done. Ellen?
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the work that you're doing on this. It's it has to be incredibly difficult because no one else is doing it. And, you know, it's one of those puzzles. It's difficult perhaps because
there's no blueprint.
Yeah, there's no blueprint, and resources are scarce. And so I can truly appreciate what you're trying to do. And you are asking, I believe you're asking the board to narrow the scope, or are you proposing how the scope will be narrowed?
Great question. So I used incredibly confusing language. So in what we recommend, what I'm trying to say is we would narrow the scope of the initial testing phase to make sure we get the pilot right, don't overburden the staff, and know what works well before we broaden it out. Meaning we're not going to bring you a proposal that says, how do we get back all levels of students in January? We have to start somewhere from a costing, implementation, and testing perspective. Broadening, this committee was not mandated, Ellen, with the support to say, go look for fundraising, go communicate with city or state officials to find support. It was only initially given a purview of looking at testing. So I'm asking and I'm suggesting that we're recommending narrowing the initial testing scope and doing that in a methodical way, that when you test a vaccine, you do it in 10 people, then 100, then 500, and broadening the scope in the area of civil outreach to make sure that we're trying to get all the resources we can behind us, from Owen's barn raising analogy, which is a good one.
Yeah, and from what you're finding, are you thinking that this is going to be a tool to bring students in, to allow students to come to school, or is this going to be more of a tool for maintaining safe schools with minimal, just to minimize the spread, when, in other words, more students will be attending school if they're not quarantined and catching COVID? So I'm just wondering what you're finding, what the group is finding as you're looking at these testing methods, what your purpose is.
Both. So there's three ways you do testing, and we've talked through this as a committee a few times. There's diagnostic screening, and then there's a third category where you're looking preventatively across an entire, ecosystem. This is meant to be a screening approach. It's not meant to be the other one. So we're trying to find is the students and staff and others that need to know in a preventative way and in an engagement way to try to increase students coming back, teachers feeling more safe, and administrators in the building. And then also imagining scenario where my daughter has the sniffles, and so she's got to go get a test to make sure they don't have to send the whole 24-person class home, plus siblings, plus whatever else. So if we can eliminate even single-digit numbers of cases per week, that has a logarithmic effect on the number of, outbreak ratios that take place. So we're trying to hopefully impact both.
Right, and I'm very excited about impacting both, because we have those issues on both ends. But I'm just wondering, legally, can we require people to get tested?
I would go with a big no there. Nikki, do you want to give a legal and HR opinion?
No, actually, the thing we talked about at the committee level is this is optional, and if all the other places that have implemented it, it's an option. It is not a mandate.
And how does the experts, how do they view having that type of variability
Incidentally, one of the school districts that have done this with some employees have 100% participation rate because the employees see it as an opportunity to be tested. And so even though it's not a mandate and we wouldn't want to legally mandate it, it's an opportunity for employees to feel safe and also to find out if they're carrying the condition. And so I think for those reasons that employees take advantage of the opportunity.
Okay, so thank you. That makes sense. I'm glad that you said that because I would be concerned if you said anything else, actually. But I'm wondering too. What are the small groups that you're thinking about? What small group are you thinking about testing?
So I think, and Julie and Owen could speak to this as well, with the group that we were just on the call with this past week, which we're the most optimistic about being a good partner for us. I know what the board has considered over the past 6 to 12 weeks has been thinking about the most vulnerable learners first and how you get them back. Especially we've been talking about in some statuses, K through 2 continues to come up. It's been the last 2 discussions. There is some science around thinking about going top down and bottom up as well, and which populations are the most important to stem the spread in, because the youngest kids have better data around how they react to it. And we have more community spread, especially we know in the June, July timeframe that the average age in Edina dipped by over 20 years based on behaviors with the older students. So we'll come back in January with more thoughts around how we go from first sites and make it more broad, but we haven't lined that up yet. There's different science around each. So we're working on that now.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really am encouraging you guys to look into it. I'm glad that you're also looking into privately funding some of the testing because of our budget. And I couldn't be more encouraging. So thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah, can I just add one more thing too, to answer one of your questions, Ellen, just to give a little bit more insight is, the thought is too, no matter the learning model, we think this testing is important. So as we go and look through things and look at groups of individuals, it's a number of tests too. Like how many can we support and do, and then fill in that way too, based on what the administration is recommending. So it's kind of working hand in hand with, it is working hand in hand with a lot of other different factors. But I think that's an important notification is that, if we start testing, hopefully right out of the gate, then that's again moves us towards getting kids in school, but we're not waiting to test until kids are in school, I guess is my point to make. So.
And again, the people that are on this committee put in a lot of time, and I'm sorry, Lenny.
So I just wanted to say that I appreciate all the work that's done. I think it's great. I fully support what you're doing. My only note, and I'm sure you'll keep this in mind, is that things do change within this process and in terms of the disease process, in terms of what we know, in terms of vaccine. And so don't be reluctant if you learn something new to come back with a change of course. That's all. But I think this is great, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, if suddenly you realize that everybody has a twitchy eyebrow and they have asymptomatic COVID, we'll test differently. So we'll definitely manage to any new symptomatology or data that comes out. But at the moment, even with the vaccines on the horizon, the testing process we think can really make a dent. So thanks. Erica, did twitchy eyebrows put you on mute, or are you still there?
I've just been talking to myself for a while now. So that was my best work for the whole night. Thank you. Thank you to your committee, everyone that's volunteered their time. I appreciate it. So
thank you. Thank you guys.
Thanks. So we're going to move on to our action items. We have 8 action items tonight, 8 action items. And I wanted to remind the board that we are supposed to have a 10 o'clock cutoff for our board meetings. We have a 9:45 cutoff for YouTube. So that's just an FYI. First, do I have a motion to approve the technology levy referendum vote date?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So we've seen this a couple of times, and the sole issue tonight is setting the date of the levy. The administration recommends that we hold the levy on May 11th. So does anyone have any questions about the May 11th date?
Erica, I do. I have a couple of comments. I called Sharon Allison, the Edina City Clerk, and she confirmed to me that a separate date in May would be $54,000. I asked her how much it would cost to add it to the school board election 2021, and she said it'd be negligible. So we're talking about $50,000 if we moved it to November. She also brought up a couple of observations that I hadn't thought of. One of which is she said that if we had the choice, she would recommend that we actually conduct a vote in November because they've had 3 elections this past year and they're a little burnt out. They had the primaries in March, the primaries in August, and then the general election in November. So they're a little fatigued. She also suggested, and I hadn't thought of this before, that we still might be having some of the lingering effects of COVID, and people might be reluctant to come to the polls because of that. And it would be more expedient if we had the vote in November because likely the effects of COVID would be reduced. So I am fully in support of the technology levy. But I would propose that we actually move it to November just to save that $50,000, given the fact that we have, we're already in a budget shortfall. So those are my comments, and I just introduced them because it's new information. It's new to me since we last met.
Ellen?
Yeah, so when we discussed this last time, at our last meeting, there were some concerns that we wanted to make sure that our levy gave us time to, if it failed, that we would have time to have another vote. And that was one of the reasons given for not doing it in November. But I just wanted to ask John Tope if that was, if that is true. I was looking into the tech levy anniversary dates, and it was unclear to me whether or not we would need to vote by the end of 2021 or if we had more time.
Chair Allenberg, Director Jones, this is the levy that we're certifying tonight is the last levy of the 10th year of the technology levy. So we would have to have a vote by November of 21 would be the last possible date to certify a levy in 22 to keep that levy going.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That I wanted to make sure that that was the situation.
Yeah, and I guess I wanted to make sure that everybody was clear as well, Chair Allenberg, that I did share that information on what the cost of the election would be for an off-cycle election. I also do not recommend that this board go out for a levy vote in November of 21 where it's a do or die. You're sacrificing $50,000 for $6.5 million. So it's not something I would recommend.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
I would just add that, as John mentioned, that this is very critical for the infrastructure and for the maintenance of Edina Public Schools. If it doesn't pass in November, there would be some pretty heavy, weighty decisions that the district would have to undertake in order to balance budgets and to make sure that we continue to move the organization. So as John has pointed out, and what we're trying to point out is the May provides an insurance policy for the organization that if it passes, then we're good, because then we could, if it doesn't pass, we still have the November. So we still have a chance in our pocket for a do or die situation. And so the May date is our insurance policy to make sure that we, of course, convince the community of the importance of the technology levy.
Lenny?
Yeah, so I favor the May date. I mean, this is a 10-year levy, and so it's $65 to $70 million because I think we may be looking at $7 million. And so the cost is just a small down payment on a significant revenue source for us. I'm not comfortable waiting till November and hoping that it works out. I would rather have two opportunities, and I actually think that the information that was brought tonight is stuff that I already knew from prior meetings. So I'd support the May 11th date.
Ellen?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I can appreciate both the concern for the community about holding an election earlier during COVID and the strain on the city employees. But I have to agree that this is such an important vote, and it's so much money that our district really needs. I would definitely not want to risk voting in November.
Any other comments before we vote? Matt?
Owen, did you ask when you called how much it would be if we do it in November?
She said it was negligible.
Negligible?
She said it was negligible. It was just reprogramming the ballot boxes and putting something out, adding an additional line or two onto the ballot itself. So it was very small. And then, to my understanding, we've never had a levy fail in Edina. Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, in recent memory. So I'm confident the voters will want this.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I think about things in percentages. We've refinanced bonds each of the last 3 years to save $1 million to the district on average with each one, which is meaningful. This is less than 1% of the total levy to put $6.5–7 million at risk. I would never do this from a business standpoint to wait. I think that, you never know what's going to happen with anything. And all the programs that this board wants to implement with reading, all the stuff we want to do with tech, hope's not enough. We need to be smart about our business decisions as a board. And we need to run the tech levy in May, and then we need to reset if we don't get it approved. I hope it gets approved. People have very tight financial situations now that they didn't have during the last levies. So when you look apples for apples, and you look at what's happening from unemployment rate, overall tax rate, hospitality industries, we have a lot of people that are leaders in those spaces in Edina that have been hit. People might have a different opinion about what they're comfortable spending right now on tax dollars. It's not something I would play with. It's way too important to this district for safety, security, and education. When we look at Minnetonka, look at these other districts around that we keep talking about comparing ourselves to, they all have the levies in the same exact area, space, or percentage per student. This is one, as your treasurer, who's been managing this budget for 3 years along with the administration. I would not mess with this. I would get this done in May. It also allows better planning. I mean, I believe in Steve. Do I think Steve, if he has 6-7 more months to plan, we can not ask him, hey, Steve, can you cut some out of some areas, or think a little bit more broadly about making bulk purchases? If 7 months earlier you have that capital available, and John and I can work together on that. I'm not going to sit there and promise we can find $54,000 through efficiencies, but I know you give leaders in a district more time to plan. It makes a big difference. So I would emphatically support us doing this in May.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll vote by roll call for the technology levy referendum vote date.
Allenberg?
Aye.
Fox?
Aye.
Green?
Aye.
Stone?
Aye.
Michelson?
Nay.
Shaw?
Aye.
Wallenfriedman?
Aye.
The technology levy referendum vote date is approved. Thank you, Directors Buettner and Tope. I appreciate your work on this.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the final tax levy for 2020 payable in 2021?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Director Tope.
Just really quickly, Chair Allenberg and members of the board, we had our Truth in Taxation hearing earlier tonight. Had no public comments. Our property tax levy for Pay 21 is increasing by 2.73% or about $1.6 million.
Are there any questions about this item? No? We will now vote by roll call for the final tax levy for 2020, payable in 2021.
Actually, can I make one quick comment real quick? We did actually, this is lower than the perceived amount that the board had set as a target. So just for optics, as we are thinking about making sure that a $7 million necessity comes through at the right time, in other settings, we are being very prudent as a finance committee and a board to make sure that we're not maxing out other areas that we can levy if we don't think it's appropriate. So we have taken a level playing stance around what we need and where, just as color and context. Sorry. Thanks.
Thank you.
I was so off the mute there. Sorry.
We will now vote by roll call for the final tax levy for 2020, payable in 2021.
Allenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Wallenfriedman,
Aye.
The final tax levy is approved. Do I have a motion to approve the guiding principles for the pre-K through 12 comprehensive literacy plan?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And okay, just a reminder to the board that we are only looking at and voting on the guiding principles document, not the entire literacy plan. Director D. St. Hubert, is there an update on anything that's changed in this document since we saw it last?
There's not any changes to what you saw last currently on the document. I just want to reiterate that we do want to make sure that this is a fluid document, and it might have tweaks and changes from time to time that we will continue to bring back to the board.
Great, thank you. Lenny?
Oh, no, I was just getting ready to vote.
Okay, thank you. Ellen?
Yeah, I have a couple things that I just want to mention. I read through this and I realized that there are some things that we discussed at our last meeting that I would like to see evident in this guiding change document. And so I'm wondering if it would be okay if I proposed a couple additions.
Yes, we'd be happy to hear the additions, Ellen, that you would like to propose and listen to them. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. What I wanted to make sure was included were a couple areas. One is that it doesn't mention the curriculum review process, and so I'd like to add an aspect of the curriculum review process in this guiding change document. So where I would add it would be that I would add in a section for the Y, under the Y, K-12 language arts reading and writing curriculum is scheduled every 8 years for review. And then under the middle column, I would add what not to do to disregard the district's curriculum review process. And then in what I would like to see as the how, or the what, that there are recommendations for curriculum material at all levels, that K-12 literacy curriculum for reading, writing, and writing will be comprehensively reviewed, and that gaps between materials and current materials and proposed materials will be identified.
So, Ellen, as you're sharing that, I'm also looking at the document, and I'm wondering about, we do have some statements about curriculum resources. I don't think we've covered all that you just mentioned, but I do think some of them are covered within that. the curriculum, I'll just
I
read
see-
one.
Yeah, I see it at the bottom of the third page. Is that where you're looking at?
Curriculum resources must be seated in research. Is that? Yep.
Right.
So I'm just wondering how those align with what you're sharing, or don't align.
Well, I want to specifically call out the curriculum review process.
Okay.
And what is going to be what is going to be come out of this comprehensive plan is going to be what would be coming out of a curriculum review process, which would be administration would be recommending to the board curricular materials, whether they are the current materials or other materials, but there will be a recommendation for all different, and when I say different levels, I mean kindergarten through 5 and 6-8 and 9-12 for literacy.
So can I make a suggestion? I think it's going to be very hard for all of us to process changes that are this large when we're supposed to vote on it in a minute. And since this is a living, breathing document, I'm going to suggest that we approve this document as is. And since you're on the teaching and learning committee, that if you guys want to go back and take a look at this and try to embed some of those changes that you have and talk about it in teaching and learning, that this go back into the what we approve tonight goes back to the teaching and learning committee, and you guys can talk through some of these changes. Because I think it's hard to, I'm having a hard time tracking what you're changing and how it impacts the strategy as a whole, and what belongs in this document and what belongs in the strategy document. So that's my suggestion for what we do.
And the question I would have, you, Ellen, or whether what you're adding is supplementary to what's there, or whether you have something that directly contradicts something in the document. So, for example, if you think the document says that, we should have A, and you think it should say we shouldn't have A, then that might be important to talk about tonight. Otherwise, I would tend to agree with Erica, and I would ask that Jody just simply put this on the next agenda for the T&L committee. But again, it depends upon whether because what you just suggested to me sounds supplementary, and actually I had a question about it that it doesn't sound like you're contradicting it.
What I'm mentioning is pretty much what I brought up at the last meeting, where I thought that we had an understanding that was going to be a part of the comprehensive plan. And so it's not a new comment. But I am happy to bring this back to teaching and learning, and we can talk about it more then and bring it back to the board in January.
Yeah, so I think I think to your point, Ellen, I think I recall talking about that, and I agree with your comment about the curriculum. Whether that specific comment belongs in a guiding change document or whether it belongs in the greater plan, I think is the question I have. And I think that's what I'm questioning, where it belongs. So I think it's a broader discussion that belongs in teaching and learning, and we can always update this document.
Yeah, that's fine. As long as you're expecting potential changes, that's
yes, definitely. And the continual input is important. And that comprehensive review, the curriculum review process is part, right, of the comprehensive review plan. So having that conversation at T&L, I think, will help us decide if it fits there or somewhere else, and making sure that we address it. So I appreciate that suggestion.
Great, thank you.
I have one other comment. The preface to this document says that we commit to sharing updates with the Edina Public School Board members when changes occur. Changes from my perspective, cannot occur to this document without approval by the board. So you may have scenarios where you believe a change is appropriate, but I think you have to circle back to the board to get a change to the guiding change document. That's a clarification I just want there.
Good.
Owen?
I support the document. It's movement in the right direction. As I said the last time, that I would fast track it and give Bonnie and Jody executive control, much as we gave John executive control of policy 308. Because of the COVID crisis, I see we've got kind of a literacy crisis. And but that being the case, and I think the momentum here is to move along. So I'd be in favor of moving it along. But it sounds like it's going to go back to committee anyway. So.
Well, I think we're still moving it along. It's just if they want semantics changed, I'd rather be done in committee than here. So that's the point.
So we need to approve it tonight so they can use as a basis for the committees they're going to get formed so that they have certain guardrails that they know exist before they start their work. So that's why we're looking to get it approved tonight.
Okay.
But it won't stall progress.
It's so they can get moving.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes, definitely.
So let's vote. If there are no other comments, let's vote by roll call for the guiding principles for the pre-K to 12 comprehensive literacy plan.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones, aye. Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Ron Friedman.
Aye.
The guiding principles document is approved. Thank you very much for your work on this document. I appreciate it. So, I look forward to seeing an updated version. So, perfect.
Love the grid.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the EAC agreement?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
This agreement, just so the board knows, was reviewed by the governance committee last week. So I'll turn it over to Director Tischer to review this for us.
As our first action item for the evening, it is my pleasure to present you for action the tentative agreement between the district and EAC, the association that represents our principals. In late November, we received notice that the principals ratified the tentative agreement. Although the details are noted in the board packet, components of the 2022 agreement include no salary schedule increases in either year and health insurance increases on January 1st, 2021. I stand for any questions that the board might have.
Thanks for your work on this, Nikki. I laughed because you said as the first action item for the evening. It's not the content.
It's her first action item.
It's my first action item. I have 4 of them to keep us.
Yeah. Are there any questions? We will now vote by roll call to approve the EAC agreement.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones, aye. Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Ron Friedman.
Aye.
The EAC agreement is approved. Do I have a motion to approve the CES Salaried Employees Guidebook?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Director Tischer.
Our second action item for the evening, the CES Supervisor Guidebook, is up for action. This group of employee consists of our community ed supervisors and managers. Specifics of this guidebook are noted in the board packet and are within the parameters approved by the board. I stand for any questions you may have.
Questions? Okay, we will now vote by roll call to approve the CES Salaried Employees Guidebook.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones, aye. Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Ron Friedman.
Aye.
The CES Salaried Employees Guidebook has been approved. Do I have a motion to approve the Superintendent's Advisory Council Guidebook Appendix?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Director Tischer.
Our third action item is the revised SAC guidebook for the board approval. The specific revisions are noted in the board packet, just a small health insurance increase in light of the new insurance rates. The revisions are within board parameters, and I stand for any questions you may have.
Questions? We will now vote by roll call to approve the Superintendent's Advisory Council Guidebook.
Ellenberg,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Green,
Aye.
Jones, aye. Michelson,
Aye.
Shaw,
Aye.
Ron Friedman.
Aye.
The Superintendent's Advisory Council Guidebook has been approved. Do I have a motion to approve the additional appendices for non-affiliated employees?
So moved.
Do Do I have a second? I heard a second. I don't know who did it though.
Julie.
Second.
Owen.
Director Tischer.
Our fourth action item is the 4 new appendices for the non-affiliated employees. These new appendices cover 9 employees. These employees' terms and conditions of employment were previously affiliated with other bargaining groups, as noted in the board packet. Approval of these appendices now associated with the non-affiliated guidebooks is within the parameters established by the school board, and I stand for any questions you may have.
Do I have a motion? Sorry, we will now vote by roll call to approve the additional appendices for non-affiliated employees.
Ellenberg.
Aye.
Fox.
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Michelson.
Aye.
Shaw.
Aye.
Friedman.
Aye.
The additional appendices for non-affiliated employees has been approved. John, do we actually get cut off at 9:45?
We're going to make it. We're going to make it. Owen's an efficiency doubleheader. We're going to make it.
So 9:45 is when YouTube will end. So the meeting can go on. It just won't be taped. So
That doesn't work.
yeah. So Zach, are you still on? Well, you got 4 minutes. So
Owen's up.
Right, Erica.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve policies 406, 423, and 424?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Director Michelson.
These are 3 policies that we reviewed last month, and we agreed to push them forward. And there is basically, there's been no changes since we last reviewed them. And we recommend we pass them.
Are there questions about these policies? No? We will vote by roll call to approve policies 406, 423, and 424.
Ellenberg.
Aye.
Fox.
Aye.
Green.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Michelson.
Aye.
Shaw.
Aye.
Friedman.
Aye.
Policies 426, 406, 423, and 424 have been approved. That is all for our action items. I'm feeling flustered because we have 3 minutes left. We now have leadership and committee updates. I do have a quick leadership update. I wanted to let the board know, which I was going to do in the work session, that we have for our next couple of work sessions coming up on Monday, January 11th, we're going to talk, get an overview of the community survey for the tech referendum. We're going to talk about the tech referendum and have a magnet school discussion. Our next work session in January, we're going to have an equity team presentation from some staff members, and we're going to have another COVID testing committee update. We're also anticipating having another learning model update. So I just wanted to let you guys know what we have coming up in January at our work sessions. So that is my update. John, do you have anything?
I do. Am I on here? I do not. I don't have anything.
Oh, I forgot. I had another one. In February.
45 seconds.
What?
45 seconds till 9:45.
Aye, she's fine.
Our policy calls for us to do our superintendent review in January, but I have that scheduled for February 8th, and I just wanted to make sure that wasn't an issue with any board members because we have so much on our plate in January. I have it scheduled for February 8th, or we can have an extra work session in January.
No, we're good with that.
Okay, that's all I have.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. I will adjourn our meeting, and thank you for all the hard work for everybody. So,
Okay, Erica, nice job.